Hello to all my people, and if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botched, Spots, and Share Shots. We still have high hopes of delivering quality wrestling content, but if not, we'll sprinkle in some Kai Tai and Bobby Mack, so we still get over. I'm your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and I'm glad to be here on this journey, and tonight that journey is our favorite gimmick matches, part 2. That's right. There was so much to talk about, Bobby, and I just said, kill it. We're done. Start over. See you Thursday. Here we go. Part 2. Ready to roll, ladies and gentlemen. So, joining me tonight as a very special guest on our part 2, we have Mr. Kai Tai. He's the lead host of the Smack Draw Podcast Network, The Rewind, and UWO. Mr. Kai Tai, how are you, sir?
What's going on, man? Thank you for having me on. I was having so much fun listening to you guys. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity to hop on tonight when you said you were creating a part 2 to this wonderful podcast you're doing.
Excellent, sir. I appreciate that very, very much. And as always, he is the Bonnie to my Clyde, the Hova to my Beyonce. He comes with his own disclaimer now because the opinions of the Yellow Shoe Guy are his and his alone. They are not that of Botched, Spots, and Share Shots or the Smack Draw Podcast Network. What he says is on him and him alone. He is the Yellow Shoe Guy, Mr. Bobby Mack. Bobby, how are you?
Hey, I'm looking forward to another Rated Y episode. Why does he say these things? So looking forward to this.
It's like when you're on the show, I expect to get those notes sent home. Like if my kid does something wrong in class, like I know I'm going to get a note. It's going to be like, Bobby said something inappropriate today, Will. How are you going to handle this at home?
Yeah, well, welcome to my mom's world 10 years or 20 years ago.
So the last thing we talked to, I'm just going to bypass everything, Bobby. We're not going to open up that can of worms. This is not that couch for you tonight. We're not going to talk about your mommy issues.
This man brought up his mom issues.
So Bobby, let's talk about when this really started. So on Tuesday night, Bobby, the last thing we were discussing were we had talked about the Boiler Room Brawl with Undertaker and Mankind. We decided there was a lot going on. There was still a lot to cover. So I'm going to give you the first at bat here. Tell me about a gimmick match that you thought of between Tuesday and tonight.
One of the gimmick matches going back old school is, and Kai Tai will like this one, animal matches, where they fought against bears. Sometimes they fought against dogs. There was different animals that were involved. And those kind of matches, Bret Hart famously talks about the story of the bear sleeping under the front porch. Those kind of gimmick matches, could you see PETA even allowing that today?
No.
I can
not
imagine.
At all.
Well, you think about it, like everybody's seen the Dark Side of the Ring stuff for Owen and Dark Side of the Ring stuff for Montreal. So if anybody's watched those episodes, you get what Bobby's talking about when he says the gimmick matches, and they talk about it at the dungeon. Stu Hart legitimately had a bear that lived in a makeshift cage under the front porch of their house, and he would bring it out at Stampede Wrestling. And before it Stampede Wrestling, it was called Big Cat Wrestling, which literally Big Cat Wrestling was them wrestling panthers and pumas and tigers. Like, I wish I was making it up, but Bobby's absolutely right. At one point in wrestling history, a gimmick match included wrestling large cats and bears.
So Big Cat wasn't just a promotion that was headed by Ernest Miller?
What?
Okay. All right. That went over like a wet fart. Never mind. Carry on, dude. It's WCW. He was never, just never
Bobby,
mind.
who is he? I'm sorry. I'm a bad host. Do you know who he is, Bobby?
Who, Ernest Miller?
Yeah.
Ernest the Cat Miller.
Oh my God, yeah. He was actually Bischoff's neighbor and karate school teacher, and that's how he got the job. And then he actually ended up in WWE for a while, and he originally had the theme music that would go on to Brodus Clay.
Oh, man. Damn it. I'm already bombing.
I'm not even going to lie. I'm surprised. We're 4 minutes into the episode, and Kai Tai and Bobby have both pinned me into a corner with something wrestling related that I had no idea what they were talking about. Show's over, guys. We're going home. We're going home.
I know some old shit, okay? Like, I'm literally trying to lob you guys the only softballs I have. Anyways,
Kai,
wrestling animals.
That would be, I think part of me would think that would be kind of dope to see today. Think about like somebody like Miro versus a polar bear.
We did kind of have a modern day version of it, but it wasn't pro wrestling. Retired MMA fighter Habib Nurmagomedov. I always butcher his last name. Habib. Everyone knows him as Habib. He's this Dagestani Russian badass wrestler, and there's a ton of footage of him as a kid wrestling a bear as like training. So like in shoot fighting, like shoot fighting, wrestling a bear as a child. So somewhat of a modern takeoff, and it couldn't have only been but like 15, 20 years ago tops.
Kai, you weren't here on Tuesday night. What's some of your favorite gimmick matches?
As far as like just the gimmick itself,
Yeah, we pretty much talked like the other night, for instance, we talked about ladder matches. You heard the kind of the conversation. Was there anything that stuck out to you that you have on your head, or is there a match that we didn't get to that you wanted to bring up?
I gotta say, probably the one that blew me away the most was spawned by the empty arena era or the COVID era, the pandemic era, and that was the original Stadium Stampede match. I think AEW handled that beautifully because of a couple things. Because of the concept itself is silly, and they decided not to take themselves too seriously with it. I mean, you had they took advantage of the empty crowd, like the empty stands, so you were able to have Matt Hardy get dipped in the pool in the stadium, and they said they had the water from the lake of reincarnation, so you saw him transforming every time he got dunked underwater. That was fantastic. You had the bar scene with Hangman Page and Jake Hager squaring off, but before they fought, they sat down and had a drink together, which was really fun. So in recent memory, that original Stadium Stampede, I think, is a beautiful thing that AEW and I don't know who is responsible for creating it, but I think it was very well done for what it was.
Bobby, this is a good segue because I have my opinions on the Stadium Stampede matches, both the first and the second one, but I'm going to let you go next. And then I'm going to be the bridge between Kyle's opinion and what I have a good feeling I know your opinion's going to be about this match.
Yeah, I thought it was a little too funny of a match. The teleporting, the lake. I've never gotten the lake. Like I like Matt Hardy. I like his characters sometimes, but I think the lake was a little too nutty. It's no more nutty, I guess, than what the Undertaker match was with AJ Styles, or any of those cinema matches that happened. To me, I like where we're going talking about an empty stadium match. But to me, it's funk, it's rock and Foley. Like those are the empty stadiums that like I feel
the halftime heat.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I see but you have to know like the way they approached it. Like Matt Hardy, if you didn't watch like all the final deletion sagas, Matt Hardy was going for like the 80s B movie, like horror movie shtick. Like it's so bad it's good. You know what I mean? And you had to know that going into it with Matt Hardy. But if you don't like those 80 like silly horror movies, like B movies, that's their charm, is how bad and silly that they are. Yeah. Then you're not gonna like that. It very much caters to that audience.
Yeah, and I think I might be a little biased too, because Matt legitimately in the locker rooms would act like that for like 10, 15, 20 minutes. Like he would come in and he would just like, you had to like take him aside and be like, dude, what are you doing? And then he would calm down. Like I was actually at the Impact where he got broken, where he jumped off and landed on top of, or Jeff jumped off the balcony and landed on top of him at the table. Like I was actually at that Impact. Like it was cool to see, but man, Matt legitimately changed backstage in kayfabe. Like it was nuts. Like, but yeah, I like Matt. I like his character, but I think that match pushed it a little too far when that was the beginning of AEW. Like that was, and they had just come off saying that this is going to be a real wrestling company. This is going to be, based on real wrestling and statistics and things like that. And the first thing they did, Matt Hardy comes in and boom, changes the whole dynamic.
Looking at it from my perspective, piggybacking off this conversation, I think that I see the points made by both of you. AEW was super young. They were coming out of that "we're going to take pro wrestling seriously again" mantra. But at the same time, I think that it's okay to have a little bit of comedy in your show. I feel like using this episode as a perfect example of how, even dating back to the earliest days of wrestling, gimmick matches were there to be extra entertaining for the guests and for the patrons and the people watching the wrestling happening. So the earliest gimmick matches could be seen as the earliest form of sports entertainment. And that's kind of what I was hoping to be the bridge and segue for this whole conversation, is because I've been stuck on this shtick about the differences between pro wrestling and sports entertainment. And I feel like if you go back far enough in the sport, you see with the implementation of some of these gimmick matches, the sports entertainment side goes all the way back to the beginning. It's not something new. Like even I originally thought. I've always thought of it around that early 2000s point where it really shifted. But if you look back far enough, even into these gimmick matches, you see how sports entertainment dates back. So that's why I also agree with Kai Tai, because when you look at the Stadium Stampede match as a whole, what it was supposed to be this epic battle that they knew they were making a movie. Like, that was kind of like their Deadpool breaking the fourth
They
wall.
don't have they didn't have an audience. They had a chance to do pre-produced content and stuff. I mean,
I think, however, looking at it from a wrestling fan perspective, I would rather have something like Stadium Stampede, where it's a big work of a match with a bunch of like high spots pre-set up in stunt form, than I would them force feed me something like the Firefly Funhouse match, for instance, where there was really no match capacity to it. It was John Cena teleporting between ages of wrestling. So, Bobby, going along with the same thing about
funny match.
Well,
the Firefly Funhouse is one of the best pre-produced matches of all time. Like that is a flawless masterpiece in storytelling. Granted, like you said, if you're trying to watch it and see, arm locks and drop toe holds, you're going to be disappointed. But the storytelling in that was absolutely top notch. Like
that's definitely one of the most rewatchable cinema matches out there.
Yeah.
Do either of you follow? I know, Bobby, you and I've talked about them. Kai Tai, do you follow the Briscoe brothers at all from Ring of Honor, currently with Impact?
Only like highlights of them on the internet. I like on my daily. I only follow mainly WWE and AEW on a daily basis. Every now and then I'll tune in and catch NXT. But like, unless something really big happens, like in Ring of Honor or New Japan, I'm gonna miss it. I know of the Briscoes. I've seen people share a lot of their promos. I think they're so authentic. Like when I lived in Carmel, Maine, out in the middle of the woods, I knew the Briscoe brothers. Like I knew these scary backwood country motherfuckers that were terrifying to be around as a 16-year-old kid, just not knowing what I was going to get. I knew those people growing up, and I find them extremely authentic. But no, I don't follow them like on a daily basis. I know they have a huge, like 2-decade long career between the two of them.
12-time Ring of Honor champions. I did this whole big piece about them. I've been on the Briscoes kick for a while. But my point of reference is
Wild Whites from West Virginia. You ever seen that?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's a very archetype of it to look at it. That would be very villainous of them. Have you seen that, Kai? The Wild and Wonderful Wests of West Virginia, or whatever it is. The crazy movie on Netflix about the I don't, what would you call him,
like
Bobby?
He's like a dancer. Like he's like this. It's this redneck, like inbred family, that just dances like this really weird dance, if you want to call it that. But for whatever reason, they're famous in that area.
Yeah, it's like famous for the wrong, almost infamous. But it was this
Wild West Country. Is that what you're talking about?
No, the Wild and Wonderful.
Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
I'll text it to you. You can look it up later. It is not a kid-appropriate show, to say the least. But the point of the story is wrapping full circle about the Briscoes is They have a ridiculous gimmick match that they did. That was the Fight on the Farm match, which is where the two of them went back to their dad's farm and fought in their makeshift ring in his barn. And the dad was the ref, and it came down to them like beating the piss out of each other, and the dad separating them, and he was like, now clean my farm up, after they like wreck the place and suplex each other off the tractors and that nonsense. That's a pretty good gimmick match. While we're on it, what do you think is your favorite? We saw a couple cinematic matches throughout we'll call it the Thunderdome era. What was your favorite cinematic match and gimmick match that came out of that era? We've talked about Firefly Funhouse, but what were one of your other ones?
That was my favorite.
Yeah. I mean, between that one, a more simplistic one was the what was it? The AEW Backlot Brawl.
Oh yeah.
That they Pride and Powerful had against, oh god, who was their opponents? It's just slipping my mind right now. But anyways, yeah, where they were in like the circle of cars. They're best friends. It was best friends in Pride and Powerful, man. And that was really well done because it was simplistic. It was just like a really well shot parking lot brawl. You know, they didn't overdo it with camera angles. I mean, it was just really well shot. It was simple. It had nice, surprising moments. One of the more eventful moments, that was when Orange Cassidy, the biggest thing was he would just appear in random places, unwarranted. And at one point, I think they like did a move into like the trunk of a car, and it caused the trunk door to open, and Orange Cassidy was just chilling there. Yeah, but no, that was really good.
That makes me think of, didn't Velveteen Dream? I don't usually like to bring up people those kind of sketchy, but
him and Adam Cole had one.
The backstage, the in the parking lot brawl or whatever. And I thought that was awesome. That was when the Dexter Lumis stuff was happening, and Dexter Lumis like hijacked somebody and ran off with somebody in the trunk of his car or something.
Yeah. He was kidnapping dudes. Like, he always gave me like that Stranger Things vibe. I don't know what about it. It was
for a long time on AEW, like they were kidnapping people like left and right. Like it wasn't safe to be around that place.
Well, NXT.
Yeah, it was NXT did it. And then in AEW, they did it with Shaq, where he was in the ambulance, and then they cut over to the ambulance, and all of a sudden he'd like disappeared.
And there hasn't been a resolve for that. I'm still upset, man. Like, he said he would be back. He's a genie. He disappeared, and he hasn't been back ever since.
Didn't he actually play a genie in a movie?
Kazam. Yes, he did.
You could go old school in cinema matches though, because you got Piper versus Goldust.
That is true. There was another one too, another old one that was. I had it written down. It's in my other notebook. It's downstairs. I'm not cutting the episode to go get it, but it was along those lines. It was from the late '90s, early 2000s. It was another cinematic match. I want to say it was the Hardy Boys. They did one for TNA and Impact. When they were first in their first run there, they had a cinematic match against each other that was really good.
The Final Deletion. That was part of the saga that they had.
Okay.
That was the very first one. It was because Jeff Hardy, that was when Jeff Hardy transitioned to Brother Nero.
Brother Nero, yeah.
That was the stipulation, is if he lost, he was no longer allowed to use the Jeff Hardy name. And yeah, he turned into Brother Nero. And that was part one of a trilogy.
Yeah, Rock Express was in one of those, I remember.
Yeah, a gun to my head, I don't really remember much from the other ones, other than I think Abyss like killed Jeff Hardy in like the third one. He had like a spiked baseball bat and plunged it into like Jeff Hardy's like chest, and like Hardy died on camera. Like just life faded out of his eyes. He died, and then I think he was back by the end. I don't know. It was like I said, it's like the B movie shtick.
So I've got a list right here, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a list. I've got 6 different gimmick matches with 6 different wrestlers attached to each one of them. Some are tag teams. Some are singles competitors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rattle off my list, and then we're going to discuss which wrestler was better known for their match of all those 6. So ultimately we're going to be like, okay, this is what I would rather watch of this list. Okay.
Okay.
So the Billy Club on a pole match, the Big Boss Man. That's one. Okay. Ken Shamrock, the Lion's Den match. Timothy Thatcher in the Fight Pit. Bret Hart in an I Quit match. The Dudleys in a tables match. Or the Hardys in a ladders match.
Oh God. Yeah.
So if you had to look at those, and I thought of 6 guys that had gimmick matches that were kind of attached to their names, so to speak. I tried to go some old, some new. The big boss man was random, but I was looking at pole matches and all the random things that have been stuck on a pole in the world of
Viagra on a pole.
Yeah, all the
Billy Kidman. I would say the Dudley Boys in the table match.
You think that would be your number one pick?
Yeah, so because that's the crescendo, that's the big moment with a table match that traditionally, because if I remember correctly, back then it was just the first guy to go through the table, not the table elimination until every member of the team. So that's the big spot. That's the crescendo. The match ends on the high spot. Whereas as much as I love the ladder matches are always a love and hate thing because they have huge spots, but you have to, every time you have a ladder match that has a lot of huge spots, you have to throw kayfabe out the window because your guy can't just lay there for 6 minutes dead. They have to get up and not sell the high spot so they can keep the match moving. And then as a fan of UFC, the Lions Den in the Timothy Thatcher Fight Pit, I'm just going to watch UFC. I'm just going to watch real fighting. Although I heard that Timothy Thatcher one was badass and he lost a tooth, which is pretty cool too.
Bobby, which would be your pick for those 6 matches that I rattled off?
I'd go ladder first with the Hardys because Jeff Hardy made it so famous to fall off the ladder after he won. It's like in every WWE video game. Like when you win the ladder match, you have to famously swap your arms and fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would give that one first. I think the Dudleys with their table matches were definitely a number 2 on that. And not to be boring, but I guess I'm going to have to go the Lions Den as number 3 as well. Like it's a very agreeable list. Like I think that's where you go. I never even heard of that Boss Man match.
It was weird. When I looked up the Billy Club on a pole match, it was from his corporate rock days. It was around the same time Eric Bischoff was booking Raw. I'll find a link for you. I was going to put together a whole list of like ridiculous gimmick matches that we've touched base on and like put a link in the website for everybody who listened to the episode who wants to spend some time looking at some very mediocre wrestling. I would think of those 6 of my favorite would be, I'm going to probably go with a ladder match too, but for different reasons. When I first started watching wrestling, I think the ladder matches were a lot of fun. I was a big fan of high spots. Kai, I understand why you like the tables matches though, like the crescendo and build up to that final spot. But the Lion's Den and the Fight Pit were also on my list for another reason, because I was going to ask you, Kai Tai, as a UFC guy, what did you think about when wrestling tried to bridge that gap between UFC and wrestling by incorporating?
They did it so terribly.
Yeah.
So when they were touching on it before UFC was popular, like the Lions Den match, that was pretty neat because a lot of wrestling fans at that point, myself included, weren't really familiar with combat sports. So it was kind of more believable. But when it's like, if you had watched UFC for the couple years, it blew up in popularity around 2006. It really took off with The Ultimate Fighter. And then you saw a lot of they tried. It's because a lot of these wrestlers, I'm assuming, they're trained to sell a punch in a theatrical way. However, a pro wrestling worked punch sell is not akin to what it looks like when a guy gets cracked on the jaw. Like, when a guy gets cracked, you're going to have one of two things. He's going to go completely limp or he's going to stiffen up, rigor mortis. So with you're doing the theatrics, selling the strikes and stuff, and you're trying to make it look like what you see in UFC, that's when I just find it it's it just doesn't blend well in my opinion. Like I love pro wrestling and the selling of moves when it's like traditional pro wrestling. But when you're trying to cross over into like mixed martial arts striking, I love grappling exchanges because you can do that all day. Like you can shoot grapple in a pro wrestling match, and anybody that knows technique, that's fantastic to watch. Like that is lovely. But yeah, watching Kurt Angle come out in TNA and have those time limit challenges where he would ground and pound a guy and the guy would try to pretend like he's knocked out and stuff from Kurt's ground and pound. Ugh, I didn't like it, man. It was as to quote the great Matt Vertigo, stay in your lane. It's not UFC. You're not UFC. Stay in your lane. Wish I could articulate it better, but yeah, I wasn't a fan.
Bobby, what do you think about the crossover between the UFC Fight Pit stuff, the Lion's Den, coming over into wrestling with those style gimmicks?
Well, first off, I gotta say shout out to my cousin Jennifer, who's watching us on TikTok. Hey, cuz. And the Lions Den match, I think, got more exposed when Brawl for It All happened, because then you actually got to see real matches. And that, just because you're in an octagon, and TNA, I think, failed at this too. Just because you're in an octagon doesn't mean you're really doing real matches. And, again, when you try to claim something real, and I think this is like kind of where AEW's failed a little bit, where they, tried to claim it was real. TNA made the octagon, and WWE started it with the octagon. You're not UFC. Like, again, you've got to do what got you to the dance, and this was not going to get them any further than asking that first girl out, getting on the dance floor, and then having 2 left feet.
It's a good way to put it. I like that. Yeah, I forgot AEW did that little cage match. That was cheesy. I think that all they got through that was I was still in the honeymoon phase with AEW, so I gave them a pass. I was like, you know what? That was nice. Please, respectively, never do it again, though. Like, just you got through it. Nobody looked like a complete idiot. Just don't do that again. Wardlow did a Hurricanrana in a shoot fight. Yeah. He did a Hurricanrana in a shoot fight. Come on, man.
I remember when Brock Lesnar did that in UFC.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody knows the world famous Lesnar to Couture Hurricanrana. Like,
yeah.
Lesnar's climbing the cage. He's getting ready to come off the top.
So bringing up Brawl for All, Bobby, is the perfect example of how gimmick matches hurt the sport, I guess, is the purest way to put it, because you look at things like the Bart Gunn Dr. Death Steve Williams match, where they went in there, and when he got beat, everybody had been putting it all on Dr. Death. So the buildup was him. So when he loses in what was considered supposed to be a shoot boxing match, how are you going to convince everybody in the world that he's still Dr. Death and he's still this big, bad, untouchable dude, but he just lost a boxing match to a mid-card guy who up at that point hadn't done anything really
was
in
knocked
WWE.
Out cold too. Wasn't even like it was like you just like, oh, the refs messed it up. Like, no, the dude was snoring.
So Will, I don't want to give you a flashback, but bro. That's not how I booked it, bro. Dude, that ruined Dr. Death. The end result as well, it ruined Bart Gunn, because when he went and did that real shoot fight with Butterbean, it killed his career. There were so many injuries from that gimmick tournament, whatever it was. The smartest person in that was probably Stevenson. Is that his name? From the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, that did not want to participate because he knew it was going to be a shit show. And that's what it turned out to be. This to me is a gimmick that it doesn't belong in pro wrestling. Like, we don't need to see real wrestlers out there. Like, you did not want to see, who's that guy? Venice Beach, Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart in a match that actually, it was a real match. Like, it doesn't work. Like, you saw that with Bruiser Brody at one point, with Lex Luger in a steel cage match at one point, where Brody wouldn't sell. And it's embarrassing. Like,
terrified Luger too.
Yeah, there's legit.
Yeah, Luger. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, legit tough guys out there. Yokozuna was big, but could he really last in a match with, a real tough guy like Yoko and Lesnar? Like, if you put them in a match for real, like in a Brawl for All tournament, like, what's going to happen. Like it didn't belong in pro wrestling, and that was one, I think, of the biggest mistakes, if not the biggest mistake of your bros.
I think the most fascinating thing about that is the fact that when backstage, when that idea is being pitched in front of whoever and however many people there are, not a person could speak up in a way that got people to hear them like, this is a terrible idea. You can't script a real fight. Like, and granted, back then, combat sport knowledge wasn't that big, maybe outside of like boxing itself, but I don't imagine anybody in that room was a professional boxer. So like just the idea, like there was just a bunch of yes men sitting in a room and Dr. Death is like, I don't know who pitched the idea, but Dr. Death is like, yeah, I'm a shooter. I'm a hard man. I'll beat all these guys up and I'll be a star. I'll shoot fight everybody and be fine. And everybody was like, oh, fantastic. Cool. For one, even that scenario, as dumb as it is, that means you're willing to sacrifice your roster. You're going to let those guys get beat up. It's fascinating how like, I refuse to believe nobody spoke up and was like, hey, let's take a second to consider how bad. But the fact that it went through with me, that's the most fascinating part, is that it got through. And then also that Bradshaw got knocked out.
Yeah, like, was this the time that like XFL was happening? Like, was Vince distracted by the XFL?
No, this had to have been before it. I would like to think. Because
No,
XFL is what, like 2000?
It was before the XFL, because if you look at the timing of Bart Gunn being in the WWE, he was gone by the Ruthless Aggression era. So we're talking early Monday Night Wars, because Russo hasn't left for WCW yet, which happened in 1998, 99.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it was before then, because Russo
wasn't distracted. He just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be honest. I don't think Vince has been paying attention since WrestleMania 6. Okay. Moving right along. Bobby, you and I brought this up in the last episode, but TLC 2 was a part of WrestleMania X7, which happened in 2001. It was literally the WrestleMania of all WrestleManias, because it was full of nothing but gimmick matches. And literally, when I say all of them, it literally had a gimmick Royal Rumble in it. So Kai Tai, I will start with you. What are some of your best memories from WrestleMania X7 and all the gimmick matches in that WrestleMania?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the TLC match. That was me in my prime Hardy Boys fandom. So like, yeah, just because that was the three-way TLC, right? That was Hardy's, Dudley's, Edge and Christian, and then I believe everybody had a third man come in. You had Lita, Rhino, and Spike Dudley all interfere during that match as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I mean, that was it. I wish you had told me ahead of time. I guess you haven't learned yet. I notoriously have the worst memory, like wrestling memory brain. If I'm not put on the spot, I'll remember the most obscure thing, but then on the spot. I'm gonna hand this off to Bobby and let me just get the card up in front of me, and then we'll dial it back once my memory can get jogged.
Absolutely. Bobby, what are your opinions on WrestleMania X7 and some of the matches that were on that cards with all the gimmick matches that were happening?
Honestly, I think that was a really great Mania. It's definitely ranked up there pretty high, but to me, like the Hardy three-way, the TLC, that stole the show. Like,
yeah.
Again, I'm not a gimmick guy, but that thing, you've got one. That's the one that's got Austin Rock, where the Limp Bizkit's the theme song, right?
Correct. That's the one where Austin turns and becomes that's the double turn, and he joins with Vince McMahon.
So the turns sucked, but that video, that build up, that's the most Limp Bizkit fan I've ever been in my entire life. Like, and I cannot hear that song today without thinking of that
video package.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
Like it was incredible. Like you had at that point in time, I think the WCW guys that had come over to WWE had already been, the ones that weren't going to make it were already pushed out. And now everybody's in their prime. And this to me is the angle, like the matches that really signified what WCW was, what WWE was, F maybe at that point. Like this was everybody in their prime. And I think that that's one of the best things it had. It was everybody that WWF had built up during the Attitude Era, during the 90s, and everybody that WCW like graduated to WWE. Like this was the perfect culmination. And I got to tell you, like every match was exciting. Just Incredible and X-Pac with Albert of all people. So you're like, who's Just Incredible? Who's Albert? Against guys like Steve Blackman and Grandmaster Sexay. That match was exciting for whatever reason. Like this show was also like, it just kept you on the edge of your seat. You had some classics. You had Angle and Benoit, China totally destroying Ivory, Shane versus Vince. Like it again. This was a great Mania. Iron Sheik winning a battle royal because they couldn't him over because he was too fragile. Like great Mania.
So now that I got a chance to refresh myself on the card, yeah, I mean, we can't sit here and say that there was a better match than that 3-way TLC, but probably another huge highlight, also highlighted just because of the aftermath, like what we know coming out of it, was that triple threat hardcore match with Kane, Raven, and Big Show, where at one point when they're driving around on that golf cart in backstage, that they run over and snag the main power cable to the entire arena. And so the story goes that if that played out any different, not only do you have those wrestlers in danger of electrocuting themselves, but they almost literally took out the entire WrestleMania, the power to the whole building. I think that is super fascinating. And also back then, in my simpleton brain, I really loved the hardcore wrestling matches. Like I adored them. I loved the 24/7 hardcore rule with Crash Holly and everything. I thought I guess I've always been a fan of the lighthearted comedy in professional wrestling. And so yeah, I liked that stuff back then too. So that gets a special shout out for me, that triple threat.
I think one of the other things is too, Taker versus Triple H. Like this is the one nobody really talks about, but to me, it was such an intense match. Like it was all over the arena. You could see these two guys that, this like may have been before the streak was really talked about too. But that match was intense. And what I like about the main event with Stone Cold and Rock, they followed Taker versus Triple H, and nobody was talking about Taker versus Triple H. Like that match is so forgotten, but I think a hardcore classic match.
My 2 cents, I don't want to piggyback too much. You guys pretty much nailed it. I think the Angle Benoit match is a banger of a match. It goes without saying, two guys that can shoot wrestle the way they do, they're going to put together a good match. The Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon street fight with Mick Foley as the special referee, the Gimmick Royal Rumble bringing everybody out, the Iron Sheik winning it. You had everybody from Jim Cornette to the Bushwhackers in it. Like you had everybody and their mom. Bobby the Brain was in it. Like there were so many cool things, and I feel like culminating with Austin Rock at the end of it was kind of the build to it, with the no disqualification match for the title with the last minute change on the rules to make it no DQ. Like everything about that WrestleMania from beginning to end made it a spectacle.
Yeah, like can you imagine anybody else other than Austin or Rock to go after Triple H and Undertaker? Like there's no two other sports entertainers, I feel like, that could have main evented that after those two.
I think Undertaker Triple H could have main evented any pay-per-view just about at any point that those two men were on the roster together, with the exception of the ones where it was Austin Rock. Those may have been the only two guys at the time that could have went over Triple H and Undertaker.
Well, Triple H tried that with Jericho after Rock and Hogan. and it failed miserably.
Yeah, well, because Triple H is notoriously a boring wrestler, man. He's like, it's a bold statement of you to say that nobody could follow a Triple H Undertaker match. Although I don't remember the match, because you're right. That match is erased from my memory. But
so I gotta touch base with something real quick while the three of us are sitting here. And mad respect to my buddy RN. I'm gonna go ahead and preface that by saying this out loud. Bobby, I know your opinions of him. So when you say Triple H is historically, what did you say? Boring? I don't want to misquote.
Yeah. He's not a high work rate wrestler. Okay. You know what I mean? You have to be like, he has to be really on to keep your attention throughout a whole match.
Because Bobby and I have caught some heat in the past, and this might be funny. This is a situation where all three of us agree on the same thing, that Triple H is the perfect example of being the right person at the right time with the right amount of talent. That's all it was for him in a lot of cases, because he was the right dude at the right time with the right amount of talent when Austin was gone, when Rock was gone, when Cena was gone.
And he was banging somebody's daughter.
It doesn't hurt. Nepotism's a real life thing too, but like, it's very rare that I would see all three of us agreeing on something at the same time. I don't take away for what he is. He's a great wrestler. He's a great talker. He was great in the ring, but at the same time, I'm like, I think if the bulk of his career was spent being booked against Austin, Rock, Undertaker all the time, Triple H wouldn't necessarily have had 14 reigns as world champion or whatever it is, 12 reigns as world champion. I know that seems really random because he just retired. I'm not bashing on the game. I love the game. I think he's
one
awesome.
of the greatest of all time. Yeah.
I'm not drinking the Triple H Kool-Aid. You know what I mean?
Like I said, the character and his stories and all of that are fantastic. But
agreed.
In my opinion, his greatest matches have to be like overbooked. When you get a straight up Triple H wrestling match, they're harder to tell. Didn't he have like one of the hottest and most rivaled blood feuds with Randy Orton, when Randy Orton kissed Stephanie when she was unconscious, and then they went on to have like one of the biggest stinkers of wrestling matches because there was no gimmick, there was no stipulation, it was just a straight up wrestling match, and it ended up like just being horrible to my memory.
It was, but you look at the matches people love to talk about with Triple H too: Elimination Chamber, Hell in a Cell, Cactus Jack, the street fight at Royal Rumble against Cactus Jack. You think of all the
that's what I'm saying.
Triple H, you're absolutely right. They're all gimmick matches. So
they're all gimmick and overbooked.
It almost looks like I know what I'm doing. We're wrapping all of this back around to our topic, gentlemen. You see what I did there? You see how I did that?
Triple H isn't Flair. He isn't Michaels. Like, they could dance with anybody in the ring, and Triple H really needed that extra, not only a dance partner in the ring, but something surrounding the event that was the gimmick. And, I think if he was like an 80s wrestler, I don't know if Triple H definitely would have made it in WWE. He might have made it pretty big in NWA, only for the fact that how big he was. I could see him in a Four Horsemen style, being the Lex Luger, being the Barry Windham, just being the extra guy, and I think he would have fallen behind the other ones. So Triple H, to me, like where he is and like where he was, honestly, it's probably a lot to do with the politics that, hey, I'm a McMahon and I can do what I want.
Have you guys ever seen the YouTube? It's a YouTube video, but it's called "Wrestling Isn't Wrestling." It's a 24-minute classic produced video with a shit ton of celebrity cameos. Essentially what it does is it is Triple H's career from start to up to the Daniel Bryan saga, because it came out like, oh gosh, years ago. It came out back in 2015. But it's one of the things, it's so charmingly done, and all the actors are actually portrayed by the opposite gender. So all the male wrestlers are portrayed by women, and then I think like Chyna's one of the only like female people, and it's enacted by like this big bulky dude. But anyways, that's besides the point. It's so well produced, and it actually echoes like what we're talking about, how like Triple H, essentially, to go off of what you said, Will, was he was in the right place, the right time. It was just he was floundering as terrorizing, and then goes into as the blue blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley character, but him hanging out backstage with Shawn Michaels and watched how it blossomed this dude's career. I promise you guys, if you watch it, you will thank me. It is one of the best pro wrestling like I don't know, like almost like a documentary style. It's what do you call it? It's not a documentary.
Mockumentary.
Is that a real life thing? Is that a real term?
Yeah, they do that with the that dog show movie that they do.
Well, it's not a mockumentary because it's all true, but it like a biopic. There we go. That's what I'm thinking of. It's a biopic. So it's reenacted fully by actors, and then it has a narrator going through the whole thing. And it's, like I said, it is fantastic. It's hilarious. It's got Macaulay Culkin in it. It's got a whole plethora of celebrities that all take place in it. And no, it's fantastic. It's called Wrestling Isn't Wrestling. And it's, if you're a fan of Triple H, you have to watch it. It's so good. Yeah, I'll send it to you guys for sure.
Okay, gentlemen, I've got a little bit of a game to play before we get ready to wrap everything up on this fantastic part 2 of our favorite gimmick matches, okay? Being a good sport, I have 6 matches.
You just did there, Will.
What?
The whole time to play the game?
We're going to play. Oh, I see what you did there, Bobby.
Nice
that was
segue,
super clever.
bro. Nice segue.
Okay, guys, so God, I hate you, Bobby. I have 6 matches, okay? Each one of you get 3. I'm going to read you off the match names, and you have to tell me which one is fake, okay?
I'm ready for this. I'm excited.
All right, Kai Tai, you ready? I'm going to throw you your 3 first, okay?
Okay.
Your 3 matches are the Chamber of Horrors match, the Squared Circle Sickle match, the Cage of Death match.
The Cage of Death match is fake.
Wrong.
Square circle.
The Squared Circle Sickle match is the made up one.
That's real? Oh my God, that was the one I was most sure of was real.
No, the Chamber of Horrors match was a gimmick match that was done by like CZW or somebody like that. The Cage of Death match was also a CZW thing. Okay, Bobby, your 3 matches, okay?
Okay.
Your first one is a Doomsday Chamber of Blood match, okay? The Barbed Wire Ring Rope match, or the Last Day on Earth Battle Royale.
Last Day on Earth Battle Royale.
What makes you say that?
Because I've definitely seen a rope match, and the first one sounded real too to me.
Doomsday Chamber of Blood match?
Yeah.
Last Day on Earth Battle Royale is actually a mobile game that I play. But it's but it sounded like the cool name of a match, and I was like, that's too funny. Like,
I was thinking that was real. I was like, you know what? I bet you that was like some wrestling promotion did a battle royal on Y2K.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. You know.
The Squared Circle Sickle match, I picked that one because my nephew has this uncanny obsession with the Soviet Union right now for some reason, and he's wearing like Ushankas, and like he was explaining to me the hammer and sickle, and I was like, dude, I'm old enough to remember the Cold War, bro. Shut up. Like, you don't even know what's going on right now. Like
Mikhail Gorbachev and that big thing on his head.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm like, you picked the most inopportune time ever to decide to be all about the USSR when the rest of the world collectively is deciding if they want to go to war with Russia or not. I was like, way to go, Nick. But yeah, so I was like, the sickle match was fun. The Chamber of Horrors match, like I said, is a cinematic one. The Cage of Death match was literally like a gimmicked up like death match in a cage was all it was like a cage with a bunch of furniture in it.
Yeah, like stuff hanging up the top of the cage.
Yeah. The Doomsday Chamber of Blood match was this whole gimmick where you had to bust the bulb of blood over your opponent to get them to be like covered in blood and shit. The Barbed Wire Ring Rope match was a gimme. And the Last Day on Earth Battle Royale, like I said, is a video game.
Those barbed wire rope matches, I remember the sheep herders being in those. Like, those things were intense. Like,
what was the Okada and FMW and Japan, they did a lot of barbed wire rope matches.
Yeah. Yeah, like I remember, like I think it was WCW that would do some every now and then, but all they did was like use that fake barbed wire that wrapped around the ropes, and it looked like legit. Like the UWF, Bill Watts would legit take all the ropes down and wrap the ring in barbed wire. Like it was disgusting. ECW, I think, same thing.
ECW did do multiple barbed wire rope matches. Kai Tai, I didn't get to ask you because you weren't here the other night, and we spent a lot of time talking about it with the AEW stuff. Do you feel like AEW is using too many of these street fights, Texas death matches, barbed wire death match? Do you think they're using too many gimmick matches in their booking, or are they doing it for cheap pops?
Neither. Well, no, and then no, and then no. I think what they found is they have found a formula because AEW strikes me as a true variety show wrestling show, if that makes sense. It feels like it tries to tick off as many boxes of genres of wrestling it can throughout their shows, and I feel like they know they have an audience for their hardcore arena matches, because that's me. Like I swear to God, I'm not a shill, but when I come away from their pay-per-views, it's always their schlocky, like demolition derby matches. I find myself like smiling just because of how just ridiculously silly they are. Like Sting just jumping off of an entryway through a couple tables. I'm sitting there. Once I realize the man is alive, I'm sitting there just grinning ear to ear, just thinking to myself, like, dude, you are 64 years old, you old bastard. Like, what are you doing up there? You know? And I find myself like really entertained. And I think that's just my theory. I feel like they're like, okay, we need to have a lucha style match to tick this box. We need to have a straight up match. We need to have a 3-minute women's block on the fucking show. Unfortunately, that's one of their things. But yeah, I feel like their arena style matches, you know, they just realize there's an audience for it. Now, you know, if you're the type of person where you want to see like a build to one of those things, like the classic Triple H Shawn Michaels, where it's like, okay, no wrestling match can contain us. We're going to have to do this street fight. Make sure you wear your jeans. In that case, you know, yeah, I can see that being kind of a bummer because you're not reserving a specialty match for a specialty feud. But I feel like they know what they have on their hands. They have a roster of guys where it feels like that's in their character, that they just don't prefer traditional style matches. Think of like Moxley and all of them. That is just like, okay, when you get me in a match, these are the ones I prefer. Meet me in one of my preferred match styles, you know? So I give them a pass. But once again, I try not to look at anything too biased. I can see where other people have issues with it. They want things to be special all the time. And I can see where that can ruffle a few feathers, but no, it don't bother me at all.
All right, gentlemen, that's it, man. We killed another episode. It was awesome. Gimmick matches part 2. Mr. Kai Tai, plug your stuff. Tell everybody where to find what you got going on over at the Rewind and UWO.
So yeah, normally we shoot the Rewind on Sundays, 9 p.m. Right here on same Twitch channel, twitch.tv/SmackedRaw. All of the Rewind content goes up on YouTube, youtube.com/SmackedRaw podcast, along with the various podcast platforms that we're all on. You can follow me on Twitter, where I don't only talk pro wrestling. I also will talk a lot of UFC and video game. That's kind of like my trifecta of social media topics I like to discuss at the Kai Tai Show. And then, of course, you can follow the show Twitter handle specifically at SmackDraw Pod. Also, if you're a fan of video game content, I just randomly pop up on this Twitch stream and stream video games like Diablo Immortal. I'm checking that out. I'm trying to figure out if it's really a good Diablo game or if it's a cheap mobile cash-in, and haven't decided quite yet.
Bobby Mack, you're up.
Yeah, you can follow me anytime, anywhere on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, Linktree. Go to Linktree. You can actually find my accounting website there. But yeah, Yellow Shoe Guy. If you can't find me with YELLOW, then just drop one of the L's and you can follow me then. But yeah, check me out. I do stupid stuff all the time. You know, So rated Y.
Rated
is
Y for Yellow Shoe Guy. I do have something cool to plug. For those of you listening in the Nashville area, coming up on June 12th, the Hot Like Sauce Barbecue Company will be featuring a pop-up event called Picnics and Poultry. It's going to be an old school family style fried chicken fry. I'm going to be slinging Nashville hot chicken, some mac and cheese, and some coleslaw with fresh buttermilk biscuits. We're going to be doing a little bit of live music with some guys playing. It's going to be a cool little picnic, BYOB. I'll be slinging hot chicken all night that night for the event. Make sure to follow Hot Like Sauce Barbecue on Instagram. Also, make sure you follow Just a Girl 918. She is Allison Siegel. She's the brains of the operation behind most of the graphic work and some of the detail work that you see behind the scenes, business manager wise, for the Smacked Raw Podcast Network and for Botched Spots and Chair Shots. Gentlemen, anything you got left to say?
It's so funny.
Man, these episodes are too short, man. Unlike a previous host that we used to have, you need to make your stuff at least an hour and a half, 2 hours, man. You cut it right when we're having some good fun, man. They're too short. You leave me wanting more.
That's why we get part 2s and part 3s and part 4s.
I definitely think we could have probably kept this going. And she said that she is the boss of Botch Bots and Chair Shots and Hot Like Sauce and pretty much the rest of my life.
Allison, just so you know, I do own another shirt. I do own another cup. These are just my favorites.
All right, John.
Really quick, just to plug it really quick. We're going to go live on Saturday. I don't know who's going to join me, but live Saturday, we're going to give our Hell in a Cell predictions. I know it's a pay-per-view that absolutely nobody is looking forward to, but it's, you got to get a prediction day episode out there, even if it is like just 20 minutes long. So tune in Saturday night. I will have myself and hopefully other people with me.
Tune in, Smacked Raw on Twitch, as always. Ready? See if I can do it without messing it up, Bobby.
Good luck.
Now, as we close another episode of Botch Bots and Chair Shots, I want to take a minute and thank you for listening. Remind you to go anywhere you do anything on the internet. Facebook, Instagram, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Literally, you have all the options. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, unsubscribe, then subscribe again. Leave a comment telling us how great we are, how terrible we sound. Either way, it helps the algorithm and it helps find new listeners. If you're feeling really generous and will be one of those VIP people, head over to patreon.com and help donate to the cause, the Smacked Raw Podcast Network. You donate some money, you get some free swag, we get some fantastic guests and equipment. It is a win-win. As always, I'm your host, a chef by trade and mark by choice. I am the Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.
And you are my people.
Have a good one.